Hi, everyone. Welcome to Authenticity with Alicia, the podcast where we explore burnout, the pressures of society, and our quest for identity and authenticity. I'm Alicia, and today we're joined by our guest, Jill Wright. She's an entrepreneur and time management strategist. I kept wanting to say specialist, and I'm like, no, I'm going to mess this up. She's a strategist who helps other busy moms with time management to feel less overwhelmed and less burned out, which you know are two of my passions. So thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited for our chit chat today.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. And I guess I am a specialist and a strategist. So all things, yes.
It's like I don't honestly know how I would differentiate. I know like when we're making our titles and like all these things, they mean different things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I know. I was like rehearsing it in my head. Strategist, strategist, strategist. And I'm like, nope, I'm gonna say specialist.
It's like one of the things that I hate the most about being in business and being a personal brand is having to select a title because there are so many things that we do in our businesses. To boil it down to one sentence that may or may not mean something to one person and a different thing to someone, it's a crock. And I hate that part. But
Yeah. And that's why I
yeah,
wanted to add entrepreneur. 'Cause I'm like, you do a lot. Like
yeah.
you wear many hats, you run many aspects of your business, you have many skills. And so I'm like, yeah, when we say one title, it's like, but you do a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's been an interesting road. There are a ton of different facets, but I love them all. This is
Yeah.
the thing. Yeah.
And you get to help others who wear many hats as well. And it's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. I am super glad, for folks who don't know, I have folks fill out like a little podcast form so I can kind of get to know what topics folks want to talk about. And there was a topic that I really wanted to talk about this season of the mental load, especially mental load in moms. And that's something that you work a lot with. So for me, I think one of the amazing things about social media is people talk about things. I also think things can turn into buzzwords. And
Yeah.
so mental load, I feel like, is starting to be talked about more. People are sharing their experiences. I still feel like it can be a buzzword, and some people don't fully know what that means. And so when you work with folks with mental load, how do you describe it to them?
For me, there's three different pieces that need to come together to be able to distinguish mental load. So we have mental load, which I'll describe, but then there's also the physical load of the
Mhm.
doing of the things, and
Mhm.
there's the emotional load, right, of
Mhm.
carrying that around. So the physical and the emotional, we can kind of understand a little bit more intuitively, but the mental load, like, well, what is that, right? Like you said, it's one of those words we tossed around, different interpretations. For me, it means never having the break from making decisions and keeping track of things.
Mhm.
So, a big place that I see this show up with moms specifically is like um, giving a task to your spouse or your kid, like, okay, you're gonna decide what's for dinner, or you're going to unload the dishwasher, or whatever it is. But in the background, you're still like, okay, I'm making sure that they do it. I'm making sure that they
Mhm.
do good choices. I'm making sure that they do it my way or to my standard or whatever. And you still have to be thinking about the thing, even though you've delegated it to someone else,
Yeah.
which is pretty counterproductive,
Yeah.
honestly.
Doesn't really
But
give your brain a break, does it?
no, it doesn't. And I think that's the big piece of one big piece of burnout and overwhelm in moms and in women in general is we want to be in the mix. We want to have things done, as well as we can. We like having control. We like things doing our way. And I mean, generally speaking, certainly not for everyone, but a lot of us can't let go and delegate in a way that feels like safely connect from the things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I get that. And I think it's so hard because I think a lot of my clients work with that, but also like my own lived experience. Like I'm a very like type A person. I'm very detail oriented. And my partner and I have had those talks all the time of like, well, like, let me do some of these things. And I'm like, okay, but you're not doing it in my way. And it's not for me, it's not a control thing. I mean, it is, but I think about the big picture, right? So it's like, okay, if we're talking about dishes put away, well, I know how to put all the dishes in an order where all the dishes are going to fit in there. So yes, you are putting the dishes away. I know it seems really silly that I'm getting annoyed that they're not in my way, but now we have dishes on the counter now because they're not all fitting. And you might not think that's a big deal, but now, like I said, that now it's in my mental list of, okay, well, once these dishes are done, I'm gonna be the one to put them off the counter. And it's just like the big picture thing. So I don't know if that's something that you experience with a lot of the moms that you work with of like, it's not so much like that small thing that's annoying me. It's the big picture and the ripple effects of why it has to be done that way. I don't even know if that
Hmm.
made sense.
Yeah, it does totally. And it links back into like our kind of inherent inability to ask for help and accept help. As moms, we're really um we feel through a variety of reasons, but we feel like we have to do it all and we have to do it perfectly. And that if we need help, then that somehow places judgment on us or diminishes our value in some way, which we all know, like in our brain, is BS. But in our lives, it plays out with almost every mom that I've come into contact with.
Yeah.
And so we need to get better, I think, collectively at raising our hand to ask for help or accepting help when it's offered and sort of recognize those little olive branches as they come and get into the practice, because it takes practice of saying yes so that you can learn to release some of this stuff.
Yes, so
Yeah.
important. Why do you think it's so hard to ask for help or accept that help?
Honestly, I think it's a variety of things. Some of the things we've already talked about, right? Like wanting understanding the perfect way to do it, wanting to make sure that things are done the way that makes less work for us after with the
Mm,
dishes
mhm,
idea, right?
mhm,
I think we saw our own moms doing it without a lot of help potentially. I think societally there's there's a big expectation of like, don't complain, this is your decision to have kids, like your decision to go to work, all of these different things, regardless of the realities of why we are doing these things.
right.
And it's pride, I think. And there's also a big piece right now with comparison, especially because of
Mhm,
social media.
yes.
We all know that what's on Instagram and TikTok is like the highlight reel. It's what people want us to see, but we still can't quite let go of aspiring to what we see.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I see that so much. And like, again, I love social media. I think it can be used for really helpful things. But when we're maybe already stressed out or overwhelmed, we're not thinking clearly and we're in our doom scroll and we see, oh, well, this person has this clean house and oh, they're on a fun vacation with their family and everyone's laughing and having fun. That doubt, that insecurity, that all those feelings can creep in and make us feel like crap.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Yeah. So yeah, I think you're spot on with a lot of that. I know one thing that you specialize in is the time management piece. And so how does time management help with burnout?
They're so intertwined. It's something that, I mean, through my own learning and experience and research, I've become very, very educated with the time management, productivity habits, rest, all those types of things. And what I realized is that it's a tool. It's not like the end game. Time management isn't something that we're
Yes.
like aspiring to be great at. It's like we want this particular kind of life. We want to feel balanced. We want to feel spacious. We want to feel easeful in the way that we go through and manage our lives. Time management's a tool to do that, much like
Yeah.
self-care is a tool to do that, which is something I talk about a lot because you need to be able to manage your time to find the time for self-care.
Mm-hmm.
They're all intertwined, but um once you can get a toolbox built for you personally that actually starts to work, you're gonna see the benefits and the changes in your life. And this is part of the disconnect, I think, when people want to progress, want to learn, want to create more time in their life, they go, balls to the wall. Most of us, we're like those A+ students, right? We're those
Mm-hmm.
perfectionists. And we're like, okay, I'm going to read the books, I'm going to listen to the podcasts, and I'm going to learn all the tools.
Yeah.
The problem is not all the tools are going to work for you in your life right now, in the season of life, with the support you
Mm-hmm.
have or don't have, with the ages your kids are, with maybe health things like your own personality.
Yeah.
There are so many pieces of the puzzle that is you that, of course, not all of the advice out there is going to work. So it can feel very disheartening for
Yes.
women
Yeah.
when we try these things and they don't fit perfectly and we feel like a failure,
Mm-hmm.
which is like the point most of my clients come to me. They're like, listen, I've tried this. I suck. I need help. Like I can't control
Yeah.
anything that's going on. And the piece that they're not understanding is that we just need to pick and choose. There are certain things that are going to work really well in this season for you, and there are certain things that just aren't. And something that I just finished up this year, which has been super fun and really transformative, is sort of categorizing time management styles into 4 different types and doing a quiz so that people can identify which is their type.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, because if you can at least get nitty gritty, of course, you're going to be a little bit of each kind. And if you take my quiz and you're like, oh, I'm thinking about it from my home perspective versus I'm thinking about it from my work perspective, you may get different results based on how you, right? But the idea is to start to think critically about, like, oh, okay, if I know this about myself, if this is true, because most people who take the quiz feel super called out, like in a good way. They're like, did you talk to my therapist? Like, I don't understand how you know this about me. But once you start to hone in on your own uniqueness and are given a couple of tools to start with, because I always follow up, like part of the quiz is you get my top 3 um, time management tools or suggestions for your type. Once you can at least start to take small steps, that's the key too. Don't bite off more than you can chew. I would much rather you learn one thing and actually implement it than keep learning and keep learning and keep reading and keep learning and never do anything.
Hmm.
Right?
Oh my gosh, I think I could just listen to you talk all day because, like, yes, yes, and yes to all of that. One, I geek out over any type of like Enneagram test, personality test. I think knowledge is power. Like, it's so hard to group all these people into a group. But like you're saying, you can think of it in different hats that you wear and take it, and you can use, okay, these top 3 things in this area of your life, but it's a starting point, right? Like, instead of being bombarded with all this information, which again, like, I love that people are talking about it and sharing it. I love that you don't do this cookie cutter approach. That's something that I'm very passionate about too, is because we see these things. And then if we try it and it doesn't work, like you said, we internalize it. Oh, there's something wrong with me, that this amazing tool that works for all these other people doesn't work for me. And so I must be the problem, instead of, no, that tool's just not a good fit for you. And that's okay. There's a million other tools. Let's narrow it down and find something that works for your schedule, your time, your energy, your family, your personality, your strengths, all these things that you get to consider.
Yes, to
Ugh,
all of that.
preach it. I hope we have a link to this test because I am
Yes,
all about these
I will
types
make
of
sure you get
quizzes.
that.
But yeah, so it sounds like that. Oh, and I also loved what you said about a toolbox. And one of my questions was going to be about self-care. So I'm excited that that's a good bridge for that. But I think a lot of people want, and understandably so, that quick solution.
Yeah.
And a lot of these things aren't going to be like long-term forever solutions, but they're tools to add to the toolbox. And so, like you said, you can keep learning, keep growing, working towards, what do they want? Well, they want control, they want peace, they want ease, they want to be present with their family, they want to have fun again. These are tools that they can get there. I love your approach to self-care, and it's one of my little hot takes with self-care too in the mental health field. In your form, you mentioned that the traditional narrative of self-care can be problematic or harmful to some people. Can you explain what you mean by that? And by the way, I agree with you.
Yeah, totally. So the way that I see self-care talked about a lot and practiced a lot is we choose something that we kind of like and we kind of heard that it's good, like a yoga class or something like that as an example that we can all kind of relate to. We know what yoga is. We know that you can go every week to a class, let's say. And that's a wonderful form of self-care. Don't get me wrong, yoga is a great thing to do for your body and for your mind. The challenge comes when we expect that 1 hour each week is our time for self-care, and we sort of forget about the rest of the time. And when that time comes around on Wednesday night, maybe you've got your period and you really don't feel like leaving the house, or maybe one of your kids throws up right before and you have to miss it, or a myriad of things that happen in our very real lives
Yep.
that make it so that when we show up to this predetermined way of caring for ourselves in that moment, it doesn't feel like care anymore. It feels like an obligation and
Mm-hmm.
another thing to do.
Yes.
And it can feel very stressful for people to hear self-care is required, self-care is important, you need to do this, but they don't know how to find the time to do it. So A, they feel like they're not doing things right and they're
Right.
never going to feel good again.
Yep.
Or so somehow make the time to do it and then spend a bunch of money and are disappointed and they don't get the result that they're told self-care gives you
Mhm.
because it doesn't fit with what they actually need in that moment.
Yep. 1,000%. And I think like again, like I'm glad that self-care is talked about. I do believe that self-care is important. Again, it's
Yeah.
a tool. It is
Yeah.
not the end all be all. But I agree with everything you're saying. I think one, it also just like that doing piece, right? It's we're adding another thing of okay, you're raising all these kids and you might have a job and you're trying to do this, this, this. And when, when maybe we're venting to our friends or we're saying, I'm having a hard time, with these things and someone's first reaction is, "Oh, but are you doing self-care?" Like, first of all, how invalidating is that? But two, it's like, cool, let me just find all this time, energy, money, all these things. And again, like it's important that we do find that time, but just saying, well, just go do self-care, go sign up for a yoga class. Okay, but like that, first of all, it's not always easy, and that might not be the type of self-care that you need.
Yeah. And each type of, um, well, I like to talk about rest through the lens of your human design energy type. And so, like, each human design energy type needs a different type of rest. Some people rest very well through quiet meditation. And for some people, that doesn't work at all. They need to do busy work, like folding the laundry for their brain to rest, right? So it really depends. But I would love to share with the listeners my two favorite ways to incorporate self care.
Please, yes, all for it.
Okay. So the first way is for those of us who may be a little bit more experienced with managing our calendars, have a bit more flexibility in our days. Okay. So my suggestion, if this feels like you, where you're like, okay, I can do the high level,
Mhm.
is look at your calendar for the coming week and just find an hour. And if it has to be 20 minutes, fine. The idea is that it's any day that works for you at any time that works for you, and it can change every week. Just get in the
Yes.
habit of finding 1 hour a week
Yep.
or whatever time frame feels like a good place to start.
Hmm.
And as you're leading up to that appointment in your calendar, we've all heard the advice like treat it like a doctor's appointment and show up for yourself, right? Yes, do that. But to prepare for your self care hour, I want you to just open up your phone and make a little list in the Notes app and notice over the coming however many days of things that actually bring you joy. Like for me, it's fresh flowers, or like when the sun peeks through on a rainy day, like through the fog, like you get that one ray, right?
Yes.
Things like this, a really great song maybe that makes you feel good, or a
Yes.
friend that you realize like every time I talk to this person, like I laugh. Those are
Mm.
the types of things that I want you to be on the lookout for and just jot them down because the goal is to end up with this list on your phone that you can glance at any point in time and remember things that bring you joy that actually fill up your cup, right?
Yes.
Um, and a cool thing to do with any list that I'll just throw in here is beside each item on your list, just write dash and then the number of minutes it takes to do that thing,
Love it.
right? So at a glance, you're like, okay, I've got 20 minutes. What's
Yeah.
less than 20,
Yep.
right? So here we are now. We've gone through our week. We've got our self-care time planned, and we have a list of things that feel good to us. And so we show up to this self-care time with no expectation. We literally stop and take breaths and just
Mm.
say, like, what do I need right now?
Yeah.
Like, does my body need to rest or does it need to move?
Hmm.
Do I need to socialize or do I need peace and quiet to myself?
Hmm.
Like, should I read a book? Should I take a nap? Do I want to be outside? Do I want to have a bath? Right? Figure out what would actually feel supportive to you in that moment. And if you need inspiration or an idea, then you can refer to
You
that
add that
list,
list. Yes.
right? Because then you're not wasting a bunch of time trying to think of like, oh, okay, well, I feel like I should get out, but like, what should I do? And what would feel good?
Hmm.
And you've already done that work. You can
Hmm.
trust that it's there. You don't have to waste the mental space, mental load, right?
Hmm.
It's there. Um, and then at the end of that time that you've allocated for yourself, you've done something that truly does fill you up in that moment. And it can look different week to week,
I
right?
love it.
A lot of people will push back on this idea though, and they'll be like, okay, I don't have an hour. I don't have an hour in the week. I don't have 20 minutes in a week. Like I am busy. And I get that. Like I have 4 kids. I totally get how busy life can be,
Mhm.
especially in seasons where work is demanding. Maybe your kids, like one of my kids is autistic. So like they have seasons where there are extra time and energy required of me.
Yeah.
So it's the same idea. Get this list going. but find things that are less than 10 minutes. And so
Mhm.
one thing I talk about a lot is the idea of time confetti. I didn't make up this term, but it's so much fun. And I literally talk about it all the time. It's the idea of our free time in modern times being broken into small pieces throughout the day, coined time confetti, 5 or 10 minutes here or there. And we don't acknowledge that it's there because it's fleeting. We don't stop and really get intentional about noticing the time. So it
Mhm.
slips away. We pick up our phone, we
Mhm.
whatever, right? Phone is pretty much what we would all do these days, but it might
Guilty.
have been like picking up the newspaper back in the day and you're waiting in the doctor's office or whatever,
Mhm.
right? So we have a lot more free time in this generation because of like ATMs and dishwashers and all of these things, but it doesn't feel like it because it's not all in one place at one time.
Yeah.
So why don't we use this time confetti and we can use it for things like self-care or growth or like whatever,
Yep.
health even. But if we're thinking about using time confetti through the lens of self-care, this looks like starting to understand throughout your day when you've got 5 minutes, if you're in the pickup line early or, like you're waiting on hold to call a dentist, whatever it is. You're this happens to me a lot. I'm in my laundry room, so I look over at my dryer. Oftentimes it'll be like 5 minutes left on the dryer, and I'm not going to walk away. I'm just going to stand here and wait for it because I'll
Right.
forget about it otherwise. But during those 5 minutes, these are the pockets of time confetti throughout your
Mhm.
day that you can refer to that list
Mhm.
and do some gratitude, right? Do
Yep.
some breath work. If you can't pick up the phone and call a friend, that's okay. Leave them a 60-second voice note and update them
Yep.
on what's been happening in your week and just let them know that they're on your mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love all of that. Yeah. And I often do a lot of work with like 5 minutes or under. I love this term, like time confetti. Also going to do some research on that of just like where it came from, give credit where credit's due. But it's
Yes.
so real because yeah, I can think of so many people where it's like when you said hour, I was like, oh, I already can imagine some listeners being like, I don't have an hour.
Yeah,
And
right.
they genuinely might not. Like, I'm not
Totally.
even gonna like try to challenge you on that. Start where you have time. Do you have 20 minutes, 15 minutes? If you genuinely don't have blocks of time that are predictable, time confetti. And what I'm hearing is I think you use the word intuitive self-care. I use the word
Mm.
like mindful and oh, the word just slipped, but it's intentional, right? And so you're checking in with yourself of what do I really need in this minute instead of doom scrolling. Although sometimes I do need a nice little 5 minute doom scroll, but it's intentional versus, oh, I'm not doing anything. Let me just scroll now. And
And
you're taking care of yourself.
this is the thing that I love about having a list is scrolling can be something that makes you super happy. If cat videos is your jam and that like makes you
Yes,
warm
it
and fuzzy,
is.
put that on your self-care list. But
Yeah.
the idea is that it's time bound
Yep.
and it's intentional.
Yes.
Now, just to give credit where credit is due, Bridget
Yay.
Kelsey,
I love all the resources.
this
Okay.
is the lady who coined the term time confetti. Her book is called Overwhelmed.
I love it.
And then a couple
Adding that
years
to my
later,
list.
a researcher at Harvard named Ashley Willens wrote this book, expanding on the idea of time confetti. So the two
Obsessed.
ladies that can be credited with that.
I feel like most of my podcast is just me getting like book ideas from my speakers. And I'm like, this is really just selfish that I get like more books on my to read list. I geek
Yeah,
out over this
I
stuff.
know. Me too,
Oh, I
obviously.
love it. So you mentioned two tricks with that. So is the time blocking for that hour or whatever time we have and the list one trick or is that the two tricks?
So the two tricks I separate in the do the time block
Okay.
or do the time confetti.
Time confetti or time block. Yep. So again, like, and I love what you're doing of you're helping folks where they're at. So you're not
Yeah.
saying, oh, well, you should find an hour of free time for yourself. Like, no, like some people, you're meeting them where they're at, what's going to work for them. Maybe an hour is a really long time to stay focused on yourself. That might be really hard. Okay, can you do some time confetti things? And so it's that not that cookie cutter approach. You're really giving that individualized, personalized thing so it works for them. You might feel a lot of guilt taking an hour for yourself right
Yeah.
away. The point isn't to make you feel bad about this. Can we start 5 minutes? We bump that up to maybe 10 minutes someday, 30 minutes, and gradually get there. So I really
Mhm.
love the mindset and the way that you work with folks.
Yeah, thanks. I think you nailed it. Guilt is real. Like that's a real thing for
So
us to take time for ourselves. Like I've noticed that unless there's a direct benefit to like financial or your child or your health, if it's just for you, you can push it off. But unless that there's a direct result to someone else,
Mhm.
then we're more willing to spend our time, energy, and money on ourselves, which
Yeah.
is really sad, but that's kind of the reality. And so I talk a lot about making sure people understand that this ripple effect, you mentioned it earlier, right? If you do spend that time on yourself, even that 20 minutes, even those time confettis throughout the
Mhm.
day, you're making sure that you're continually sort of filled up. And so you have more to give. And then you're friendlier with your friends and your colleagues and your kids.
Yes.
And they go out into the world friendlier with theirs, right?
Yeah.
And you can then see the benefit of you doing this work for you and you taking this
Yes.
time for you.
Yes, it's like that saying of, you can't pour from an empty cup. And so it's like do have to genuinely take care of ourselves so that we can be present in these interactions with people, so we can experience that joy with our loved ones, so we can listen to our partners or our friends when they're having a bad day and we're not getting drained, so we can help our kiddos when we have, so like we need that energy. Like we don't just have this unlimited surplus of energy. Like no, if we did, then we wouldn't be burned out and tired and like needing all your wonderful strategies.
Yeah. And I love this because my definition of burnout is an unequal exchange of energy out and energy
Mm.
in,
Oh, I
right?
love that.
Yeah. And so when we think about that specifically as mothers, or when our kids are small, like it is all about them. We are constantly giving, and they're not really good at giving back anything but germs, like they don't fill us up.
Right.
That's not their job. It is our job to like give out energy. And so if
Mhm.
we know that we can't get it back from that source, it's our job to find another source. It's
Mhm.
up to us because no one's giving it back to us. And I think that this is pretty common throughout, like even at work. You give and you give and you give at your job, and sure you get your paycheck, but you might not get recognition. Like we need
Mhm.
to get filled up in different ways. You might not have
Mhm.
friendships in the office, right? Like that commute might drain you. And so if you know you're not getting energy back from the thing you're putting energy into, find a different way.
Yep. Yeah, I think and I love like it's something that I use a lot is like these different areas, right? So, you mentioned at home and your family and your social life, your friend life, and we've got, other aspects of our identity. And I think that burnout can really happen when like some of those areas are really lacking. And I think that's what self-care often gets, we think of self-care as a spa day,
Yes.
taking a nice bubble bath. I love those things. If those things work for you and you have the time and energy to do that, I love that for you. That's also not always what self-care is. Like you've said, sometimes it doesn't have to cost any money.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes it's hard things. Like maybe we need to have a vulnerable conversation with our partner about, hey, I'm really needing this. I need to ask for help. That's self-care. Doesn't have to cost a lot of money or take a lot of time. And I think you do a good job of like explaining that there's different areas of ourselves that maybe we need to try to like be in tune with and be mindful and aware of what our bodies are really needing.
Hmm. Yeah, thanks. I love that sort of description of it. And I think that you're right in that it's beautiful to have a spa day or something like that. But we touched on it before, the guilt that comes with spending the time and money sometimes outweighs the benefit, right?
Right?
Something as simple, my absolute form of self-care is sleep
Oh,
and
big
a
fan.
nap. I mean, that for me is the ultimate.
Yep. I love it. No, my favorite is a 5-minute walk around my block.
Mhm.
Takes 5 minutes. It's free. Sometimes it's laying on the floor with my cat. I call it floor time. And like, but yeah, these small moments. And I love that idea of, you add these things to your list. A nap that could take anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes to maybe a little bit longer if you've got that time and that works for your body. But I love that they are free and accessible, but they actually like are powerful. And you mentioned earlier, like those small steps can be really powerful. And I think self-care is too. We don't need to get in this black and white, all or nothing thinking of like, I'm going to do a whole day of nothing and that's going to be wonderful. Maybe that isn't. Maybe you need to start small, but it can have such a big reward. I wish my body let me nap though. I'm kind of jealous. I can like rest, but it
Oh,
doesn't let me nap. So I'm a
oh,
little,
that is
little
a
jealous.
bummer.
I know. It's okay. I'll just live vicariously through all my nappers.
Yeah.
Um, how can folks find out more about the services that you do if they are like listening to this and they're like, okay, I need some help. I love like I need some help with this time management. We've got this quiz that you mentioned. How can folks find you?
Yeah, obviously they're podcast listeners, so I share a lot of cool information over at the Grow Like a Mother podcast. That's a really easy way to get into my world because it's free, and you can take me along with you wherever you are. The quiz is a fun way to get started with at least understanding and getting some tangible free tips right away. So that I'll send you the link, but it's at my website, jillwright.ca. That's kind of my hub for all of the resources. Um, and those are my favorite places to be, honestly. And I love giving personalized advice. So if you're just like, hey, I heard about you on Alicia's show, like this is my situation. Can you give me, just send me a DM on
Yeah.
whatever platform. Like I am so happy to connect. Yeah.
That's awesome. No, and yeah, we'll post all of Jill's links and stuff so you can follow her podcast, website, socials, all of that, because she gives great information and it's relatable, it's real, it's authentic, yeah, it's not this, oh, this is this ideal image that everyone needs to have. And you have these different levels of things that people can get help with. So we'll make sure that folks can get that because I know I'm gonna look into that time quiz myself. I'm all about those things. Is there anything just like last things that you'd like to share with folks that you hope the listeners can take away?
The thing that feels important for people to hear right now is that we can't forget the community piece of this. We're not in it alone. We're obviously not meant to be, solo existing humans in a silo. And the power of community is so important with everything from our work to our relationships, in motherhood and in every area. So reach out to people and be vulnerable and also be the resource or shoulder, whatever that other people might need, right? And that's how we
Yes.
start it.
I think that is huge. So we talked about that comparison earlier and the social media, facade of things. And I think a lot of the change and happens when we share our stories. And I think people are talking more and we're talking about mental load, we're talking about burnout, we're talking about these pressures. And instead of us internalizing, well, why can't I do all the things? Like everyone else seems to do all the things. And then when we talk about that with people and they're like, no, 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 no. I am also struggling doing just some of the things. It heals us, it heals them, it builds community and support and encouragement. And it's just so, so powerful. Yeah, we are not meant to do all these things alone.
No, totally. I literally created an online community called The Village because our village is
Oh,
missing. Like this
yes.
is we need this, you know?
For real. No, I'm like, I don't know how people do it. And it's like, well, our village, like we need
Yeah.
help, we need
Yeah.
support, and it's great. So, oh, well, thank you for all the work that you do. This has been such a blast. I think I could talk to you forever, and I'm just so excited to read these new books and to take these new quizzes and resources. I always like to end the podcast with asking, how have you been practicing authenticity lately?
Ooh, love that question. It has become such just a part of my DNA. I gave up a long time ago caring what other people think. And I know that it's hard, like people can say that and they're like, oh, but you never really, no, I literally do not care. And it
Oh,
gives me
so
so much
freeing.
freedom
Yeah.
to just show up in, you know, my my own truth.
Mhm.
And I have had a lot of really positive experiences with people seeing me the more that I sort of take off the masks and the shields and all
Yeah.
costumes that we wear and have been placed on us. So for me, it's just practicing feeling comfortable showing up exactly as I am and recognizing when people see that. And yeah.
It's so powerful. Yes, it's like, yeah, you're 1,000% right. Like, I think we can all say it. And there might be parts of us that are like, okay, like I'm secure in these things, but to truly be like, want to be myself, and the people that matter are going to see that and they're going to accept that. And that's what you like, what's what people deserve is to be themselves and to be seen and accepted for that. And so it sounds like practicing, again, keyword, easier said than done, of taking off some of those masks that maybe have protected you or you've learned over the years and just embracing the realness. And it sounds like you found some wonderful people who like that and love that and accept that version of you, that true you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much. I have loved our chit chat. I'll be respectful of your time, a big boundary girl. So thank you so much for chatting, for sharing some of your tips, your resources. And I think I just know this topic really resonates with a lot of people. And so thank you for the work that you do and the conversations that you have around this.
Thank you for bringing this conversation to light. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you.
All right, folks. Well, until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. And remember, the world needs the real you. So let's explore that authenticity together.